Howdy, folks. I hope y'all are having a good evening. This is amadpainter, and I'm here with Mark Eddy, and of course, this is Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. And I want to remind everybody we have a special going to the end of the month. If you donate $50, you get a 1-ounce silver bar, and you got to make sure you put in there that you your address and Silver Streak. And for $75, we have a ball cap offer, and you have to put a ball cap in there. So remember, if you're not in the chat room, you're missing half the show. So come on down and say hey. How you doing this evening, Mark?
Fine. Just enjoying the nice, a warm fall afternoon. Leaves are turning yellow, falling. So it's just.
You sure they ain't from the fracking gas?
Boy, I hope not. It could be from the chemtrails.
Or them too.
But it's just one of those nice fall afternoons. It's not real cold. It's just the right temperature. So it was a very pleasant day, and
it's good working weather here.
Yeah. It's still nice enough to be outside. So I enjoyed raking some leaves today, and good day.
All right. I think we got a good show set up for tonight, don't we?
Yeah, we have two guests. First, our guest is going to be a new voice to an open canvas, and the second hour guest is a return guest. It keeps coming up each week about how what was it? Incongruent show was a few weeks ago with Ed and Catherine. This one has more continuity about different parts of the country, some unusual events going on. So I think we're going to be in for a informative discussion. So
we're going to cover a little newer ground for us, isn't it?
Right. Right, and Julie Ryder is an artist, intuitive, nurse, but she's also going to give us some information on ley lines and who knows what else from Montana. So, I don't think we've ever really discussed anything from Montana, and this is great. We're going to get add a new state to our studies. So, welcome, Julie. I want to hear what's going on in Montana. How are you doing?
But first, I want to start with what's going on in the entire world and then narrow it down to Montana, because it's how I figured all this out. Okay. Klaus Dohn is my hero, and he talks about the 6666 grid. From the North Pole to Mount Kalash is exactly 6,666 kilometers. From Mount Kalash to Stonehenge is exactly 6,666 kilometers. From Stonehenge to a crystal pyramid in the Bermuda Triangle, which I knew about in 1970 from Marcel Vogel. He was a very good friend of mine. He started the Vogel crystals. He was involved in this pyramid, and then, of course, our powers that be classified the information. But before they classified it, he told me exactly where it was. So from Stonehenge to the crystal pyramids in the Bermuda Triangle is exactly 6,666 kilometers. MSN announced this about a year ago, and so did a group of French archaeologists that have actually filmed it, so we know it's there. From the Bermuda Triangle to a pyramid in Alaska that Linda Moulton Howe has just talked about is exactly 6,666 kilometers. Back to the pyramid. From the pyramid to Easter Island, 6,666 kilometers. From Easter Island to the South Pole. So there's irrevocable proof that there's a grid set up from an ancient civilization around the world, and this is what we know about it so far. Now I'm going to go to another grid. And this work is on the internet, but the man who discovered this remains very anonymous. But I checked it out, and it seems to be very true. If you start, it says 100 kilometer, which is 62-mile wide grid, that starts at Easter Island. Just imagine a globe. Easter Island to the Nazca lines, to Machu Picchu, across the ocean to Dogon country in Mali, Giza, Petra, in Iraq, to Iran, Pakistan, holy sites all the way, sacred sites, to Angkor Wat, to Easter Island. It forms a 62-mile wide grid around the globe. If you come up from the Nazca lines across the top to Angkor Wat, it comes right down the 60-mile wide grid in Montana. And that's how I figured out it was here. So a few years ago, the head man of the Navajo, Leon Secatero, in 1998, he gathered the indigenous elders from around the entire world into New Mexico. They brought the crystal skulls, they did ceremony, they combined their knowledge, and when they gathered together, they dismissed all of the English-speaking Western mind people out of the circle because it didn't translate into English what they were saying. It was very confusing in English. So they moved them out of the circle and they spoke a language between them, which was called the original language, the original instructions. And they found that they all had the same knowledge, the same information. And Leon Secatero came here to Montana. My husband and I were taken into the ceremonies a few years later and taught. In the ceremonies, they read the ancient Anasazi pictographs, and they're about quantum physics and astrophysics. They're about genetic engineering. They're grid maps. And there's a very specific language on some of these glyphs, which Klaus Dona has shown is a worldwide ancient language. It exists all over the world, the same language. Leon Secatero came here to Helena in 2008, stayed at our home, and we took him to a couple of sites which we had discovered that have pictographs of this ancient language and petroglyphs. And he started reading them. And they're star maps, and they're the same language. On my website, I match this ancient language to crop circles, to cymatic symbols, to symbols that appear in orbs, to ancient languages from Colombia, from all over the world. And then it hooks into Klaus Dona, who has the same language he compares to the rest of the world. And so we know that there is a worldwide language from a worldwide civilization that's highly technological. Joseph Farrell talks a lot about 3 levels of technology. He talks about the first and highest level, the most advanced level, is Tiwanaku and Pumapunko, because the construction there is a much higher level. The second level are the pyramids in Bosnia and in Giza. And I believe that here in Montana we have the third level, because the structures here are not nearly as sophisticated, but they do follow the same patterns. So I have found 5 very large dolmens. Dolmens are kind of like Stonehenge. There's a lintel, 2 lintels, two huge rocks and a lintel over top. And in one of the dolmens there are 6 huge rocks and 3 lintels over top. One of the dolmens is about 60 foot high with a capstone. And these dolmens appear, they're in wild lands. They're mostly in national forest. One of them is on private land. But they appear on an exact line on a map about 23 degrees apart from each other. So Bruce Caffey writes about how there are 3,000 sites of stone circles and standing stones in England, and every one of them is 23 degrees apart from each other, or a multiple of 23 degrees apart from each other. So from the air, from above, they form a geometric pattern. So when I figured that out, that these dolmens I had discovered were 23 degrees apart from each other, and the other interesting thing I noticed is that from the front of each dolmen, you see the peak of a pyramid-shaped mountain, just like the 81 in Bulgaria. There's a paper out by the Solid State Physics University of Bulgaria that talks about the only thing that the dolmens have in common is that there is a pyramid-shaped mountain directly from the front of the dolmen, line of sight. So they follow these patterns. I also found it interesting, and Mark, you may talk about this a little bit, but I was looking on the internet about Mystery Hill, the Stonehenge in America.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a picture of a dolmen there that they say is a T-shaped dolmen inside. Have you been into that dolmen?
The one on the it's like on the back part of the oracle chamber that overlooks the sacrificial tables.
Yes.
That one, yeah, it's there.
Okay, so what interested me in looking at the site on the Stonehenge in America, the Mystery Hill, was that there's a dolmen here exactly like it, except it's bigger, much bigger. It forms a T shape inside of it, the chambers inside of it, just like it's described on that particular website. The other thing that how Mark and I connected was that a lady, Yoli, put things on the internet about a site in West Virginia on her farm where there is this shaft that looks like it's made out of hewn boulders, big hewn rock. And I matched that to a shaft here in Montana in another site, which we've just named Giant's Playground. There's a very large tunnel you could walk through it. And the side of the mountain, hewn rocks on, and it also matches very closely a wall, a tunnel through a wall in Russia, where each stone is over 3,000 tons. The stones in Lebanon and Baalbek are only 1,500 tons, so this is twice the size. And it forms a huge wall on a mountain across Russia. And when I match these pictures, they look like the same type of construction.
So
Let me take a breath. Any questions?
Well, for one thing, we've had Klaus Donner on a couple of times. He is an awesome guest. We really enjoy having him on. This is the first time I've heard this.
Well, why you haven't heard it yet is that he said it all in German. And so what I did was I follow everything he puts on the internet because he figured out this worldwide global language as just like the elders talked about, except he documents it and puts it on video. Okay, so there was one that was in German only. He doesn't speak much in America the last year or two, but his overhead projector overlays, the graphics were still in English. So I stopped the video every few seconds and copied it down. and so I had
awesome. That's awesome.
I love the pause button, right? And it was kind of difficult because it was off in the distance, but I got it. And then I went, aha, and said, wait a minute. I know that there's a crystal pyramid exactly right here because Marcel Vogel brought crystals up from that. And I know that Linda Moulton Howe just found this pyramid in Alaska that was 50 miles from Mount McKinley, so I did the math, and sure enough, it was right on. So I just started playing with this grid line, and what Klaus Don has done that's just extraordinary is his friend has the technology to do ground-penetrating radar. And so he has gone to these sites and said, like he went to the pyramid in Bosnia and said, okay, it's 5 more stories down and here's where the door is. He went to the Burroughs Cave in Illinois, which is very controversial, but he said that it was only excavated a very small part of Burroughs Cave, that there's a whole tunnels down through there where there's sarcophaguses and there's this and there's this, and he told people exactly what was there, what was under Easter Island. He also published that underneath the terracotta warriors in China, where they found the terracotta warriors, that there is a 9-step pyramid exactly like the ones in Mexico. So he's kind of rocked the world by just giving out this information over the internet, saying, here, go find it.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
Extraordinary stuff.
We love talking to him, didn't we, Mark?
Oh, yeah, it was very informative discussion. I was very privileged to be a part of those couple interviews.
Time to call him back.
Julie, so there are these mine shafts associated with these pyramids as well? In many cases?
Zachariah Sitchin writes a number of books about Anunnaki coming here to mine gold. Michael Tellinger, who's another one of my heroes, talks a lot about stone circles all over Africa, tens of thousands of stone circles in Africa where they mined the gold. Right outside of Helena is a place called Confederate Gulch, and it is the largest amount of gold taken from 1 square mile in the world in modern times was taken from Confederate Gulch. And the Shaman Rock, which is where all these pictographs are, into a rock that looks like it's had liquid glass poured over top of it. It just shines like the nearest painting like it is just one gulch over from Confederate Gulch. There's mine shafts all around the canyons. And there's this huge rock. This is where I've taken hundreds and hundreds of people there from all over the world because it's a very powerful sacred site. It's just a huge rock field, about half as big as a Volkswagen Bug, let's say, about that big. And it's got glyphs on the side of it, and it just shines. It's purple, and it just shines. It's just out in a field. Above it are pictograph sites and huge walls, canyon, and a lot of gold mines. When I took an Assiniboine elder there, when I took a Lakota elder there, they just immediately dropped to their knees and started talking about, this was in their Prophecies, this was one of the sacred sites, and they pulled out pipes and did pipe ceremonies. That people who understand it immediately just go into ceremony because they have discovered one of the sacred sites that's in their legends. And so that's kind of what kicked off this whole thing. About the year 2000, I started studying it, and Leon came in 2008. And started mapping it thanks to Klaus Dona and some of his work and some of the work on ley lines. You know, none of us work in a vacuum. There are so many other people, thanks to the internet, that contribute to this knowledge. And and talk shows like you have, and just information of combining this knowledge, and then takes off with it. The other key to all this is that many of these symbols are cymatic symbols. Cymatic is sound made visible. Way back in the 60s, and I can't quote you the name of the man who did it, Jen or Jenny, it's not on the top of my head. He put black cardboard over a speaker and poured salt on it. And as he slowly increased the volume in the speaker, the salt would bounce and form symbols. Now they have a thing called a cymoscope, which you can run the sound through a computer, and it forms these beautiful mandala-type symbols. These symbols are that ancient language.
Wow.
And so on my website, on the page called Ancient Technology, I go back into the Sumerian tablets and show how some of this work came from a man named Michael Ervina, and then I again took it to the next level. In the Sumerian tablets, the tablet of Samash, there's a symbol on a pulley where they're raising a table, and that symbol is the frequency of two tones that forms anti-gravity. When they meet in a scalar wave, they form anti-gravity. And so then I took those symbols and I matched them to the pictographs on the rock. Okay. One particular symbol has just fascinated me. It's called the Changing of the World symbol. And in the ceremonies on the Navajo, they draw the symbol over and over in the sand as part of their teachings. They talk about the first world, second world, third world, fourth world. We just moved from the fifth world into the sixth world. As they tell their creation stories and histories of the world, they draw these symbols. It looks like an hourglass. And one day it just hit me, this is a torus, a wormhole, because it's depicted the same way, like an hourglass. And after that epiphany, on my website on ancient pictographs, I match those to a cymatic symbol, to pictographs in a place here in Montana, to pictographs in Chaco Canyon. They're on the Shaman Rock. They're in Dona shows pictures of this ancient language, examples in Colombia, on the bottom of a pyramid stone that was from Ecuador. And fascinating enough, Corey Good, my latest hero, I follow everything he says. He showed pictures of the Agarthians, who are the people from under the earth. And in two of the pictures, he has graphic drawings of them. They're wearing this exact same hourglass symbol on a medal on their chest. And I went, there it is again. What they talk about is this is a changing of the world symbol. It's in the Popol Vuh, the ancient Mayan text, that talks about the changing of the worlds. There is a site here in Montana, which is the largest polychrome pictograph site in North America. And it is beautiful glyphs. They're perfectly executed. They're not just smeared paint. They're perfectly executed circles, making shield warriors. And they're color specific. It's like aquamarine and vermilion red. There's violet. There's beautiful colored paint. Perfectly executed. And the first, it's well hidden. And I'm very glad of that because of some of the things that have been destroyed. And I found an old Crow man who finally trusted me enough to tell me where it was. And so we hiked up to this site, and it's in a separate valley that is redstone, like Sedona. It looks like Sedona. And there are these huge rocks that are perfect circles. It's very unusual rock glyphs. So they call it, they call them shield figures. And on it, there's these figures and these colors. As I look at the pictograph, the major pictograph, I said, I can read that. Leon taught me how. Because these ancient glyphs language are read from right to left. Just like some of the ancient languages, you read right to left. Okay. And as I was looking at these glyphs, I said, here's the first world, the second world, the third world. The fourth world is missing, and around the corner, here's the fifth world. Exactly in order. It starts out, the Popol Vuh says, and the glyphs match this, the first world was the world of no color. And the novelists talk about the first world, no color. It's where we crossed the galactic plane, just like our Earth on December 21, 2012, crossed the galactic plane, the center of the Milky Way galaxy. So the glyph says, we crossed the galactic plane into the first world. The first world was a world of no color. The second world was destroyed by water. It's where the animals appear. And the second glyph, the head is aquamarine blue, just like water. And there's an animal on the chest. We moved into the third world, which was destroyed by an asteroid that hit the Earth. And in the third glyph, the head is just dark, brilliant red. And it shows on the medallion on the chest an asteroid hitting an Earth. The globe is colored, and it hits the Earth. The fourth world was missing. The fourth world was destroyed by high winds during a polar shift. And the fifth world was, the glyph was just blank. It's called the world of green glitter. And the world we just finished. And it's very green, and obviously the lights of the cities light up and form what they call glitter. And so it has a green circle in the center. The legends say that 7 tribes migrated into the fifth world. So each of the feet have 7 little prongs on them. In Chaco Canyon, they call them migration signs. They look like chicken feet. And it shows how they migrate and form a tribe and where they go on the landscape, the migration symbols. So I knew that was a migration sign. So couldn't find the fourth world, and that just puzzled me. We went 2 or 3 times a year for several years, and finally found it. It was, if you scrape down the hillside, all the dirt out, the sand, I guess it's sand, between the third and fifth world, it's way down low, but it's there. and it showed a man becoming a bird, wings in the air and flying, and it showed a pole, like a latitude line, and clouds. So it was the world of wind. So if you look at them in order, you have the void, no color, destroyed by water, fire, wind, and the prophecies say if we do not transcend into the world of Homo sapien transcendent, that the fifth world will be destroyed by what they call earthquakes, the nuclear. There's earthquakes and there's nuclear symbols. The atomic symbols in New Mexico. I never understood that. Earthquakes and nuclear is like one word, right? Until Japan. Earthquakes created a nuclear power plant coming down. And these are in their symbols and prophecies going back many thousand years. But they say we're at a dividing point, that we either transcend into a world of peace and light, 1,000 years of peace, the millennium, or earthquakes, the nuclear. And many of the elders now are saying that we have crossed that tipping point. We have crossed into what they call the positive timeline. And so there will be a lot of shifts happening, but we made it, according to the Hopi elders and the Navajo elders and many from around the world. We moved across the tipping point.
But, Julie,
well, that's good news. Sorry.
Yeah, it was to me too. It happened in 2011. As I tracked back all these announcements, they all originated in 2011, and many people from inside government, from a secret space program, from the disclosure program, from all over are talking about 2011. And so I believe that's when we made that critical shift.
But these prophecies have been accurate so far, right?
Yes, but even the Hopi prophecy rock shows a split. We either go here or here. The Navajo counter says we either transcend into this world or this world. So they knew this would be a time of transition, that consciousness had reached the point that the humans on planet Earth would make those choices. So it was like the prophecies are very accurate, but in 2011, actually in 1998, things started shifting. Gordon Michael Scallion, who was, he was hitting 80-90% accurate. That man predicted 13 earthquakes in a row to the decimal point. I mean, he just never missed until 98, 99. And then all of a sudden, he just wasn't hitting anymore. Because in 1998, when the elders came together, they did a ceremony where they, quote, reset time is how they describe it. And I learned part of the ceremony. They reset time. They said they stretched time 16 years so that people would have a chance to get ready, to wake up, to become conscious. And sure enough, Grandfather Martinez, who is the last living of the 5 Hopi elders that are authorized to make announcements and teach the world. They visited the United Nations. He, on video, announced, we've reached the positive timeline. And what's interesting is, as you go around the prophecy rock, which was never shown in public until this particular announcement, he says, the negative line has disappeared. It used to go all around here and it's disappeared. So, and then he shows another glyph, which no one's ever seen, at least in public, of a highly technological glyph about the world of technology.
What's that one saying? That one could have some interesting interpretations.
And I couldn't understand what he was saying except just that he announced it. He is now in a nursing home in Arizona. He's this is kind of the last public announcement, and he is the last alive of the elders. Leon Secretarial has passed in 2008. The chief of the Cherokee, my other dear friend, passed. So many of these elders that have held this sacred knowledge over, that was handed down to them that they've learned, are passing rather quickly. And so It's many of them were videoed right before they left, or they took what knowledge they had and gave it out into the world as much as possible before they passed on, because they realized that they held knowledge and it would die with them. And so many of them, which was many of the reasons I know what I know, because I was taken in by a number of these elders in their homes and taught things so that it would not die with them.
Were they concerned?
One to the next.
Julie, were they concerned about technology, or were the elders in favor of how technology is bringing the world together?
Oh, yes, and they use it. The more sophisticated elders use this. But this is what they say, and I think it's very beautiful. They say, we have built a technology inside ourselves. In other words, anything you can do with an internet, we can do ourselves with a crystal. And so we have built this technology inside ourselves. The Western mind has built the technology outside themselves. So it's like they experience multiple dimensions in their ceremonies, and I have been witness to this and journeyed here into multiple dimensions, which they visit on a regular basis, understand things, time travel. It's all inside their own ability, where we only do that through technology, some of it. So they talk about the problem with becoming Homo sapien techno, which is like robotic, non-feeling, non-spiritual beings, because on one timeline, this is what they see happening. On the other timeline, they become Homo sapien transcendent, which is very spiritual, where the science is used through personal knowledge and very spiritual knowledge. It's like quantum physics versus Newtonian physics. Quantum physics being the highly spiritual ability, Newtonian physics being what we have on the earth today.
That makes a lot of sense to me. I'm kind of spiritual. I believe everything comes from within.
I'm sorry, Thomas, you believe everything what?
Comes from within. We have to look within in order to understand everything else. If we don't understand ourselves, we can't understand the universe.
Exactly. And when we live within ourselves and then we form group mind, then there's no war, there's no anger among us, because we have reached that level. And they talk about this, all religions talk about 1,000 years of peace, 1,000 years, if we make this leap in consciousness.
Well, it'd take that long for us to fight it out with our neighbor.
I don't know. It's amazing to me let's say, I started this path in when I was 28 years old, and I'm 65. So in those short years, it's amazing to me that much of what I learned in the beginning is common knowledge now. I think we're moving pretty rapidly. Oh yeah, I agree with that. I find this very interesting. The Hopi legends, it seems not just them, but a lot of the older legends are turning out to be true. And it's kind of upset a lot of the people who are in control in the schools and that, and it's caused a big problem. But I think we're making headway into really learning history the way it should be.
Yeah, well, Thomas, Julie, just to tie in what you just said with Julie's statement earlier, was there was the comet in one of the prophecies. Andrew Collins was on our show talking about the comet that started the Younger Dryas period, and there's the layer of ash.
That's what they believe wiped out the Clovis.
Yeah, so, but there's I'm just providing other guests information that buttresses what Julie's saying. But there's the information's there.
In fact, Andrew Collins is a member of one of the Facebook groups that I see his posts, and I answered back recently. He was having some type of a discussion with Graham Hancock about the origin of Göbekli Tepe, what star system it was connected to. And Andrew talked about it being connected to Cygnus. And apparently Graham Hancock thinks it's connected to Sirius. And one of Andrew Collins's deciding factors was the local shamans and people from that area are very into Cygnus. And I started laughing, and I was thinking about all the nights after the Lakota Sundance and after the Blackfeet Sundance, and on the Navajo after the ceremonies, you stay 4 days and you don't wash, because as the sand embeds into you, the knowledge embeds into you, and after 4 days they just laugh and joke and go over all the teachings and everything that happens. You have a 4-day debriefing period, so to speak. And most of the humor in those 4 days has to do with how the Western mind has interpreted all the knowledge that these elders hold and their artifacts, and they howl and laugh, and it's so funny about what these Western people think about the knowledge that they carry, the sacred knowledge from what they call the Star Nations. In fact, back in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, most families, Indian families of any note, had their own anthropologist. And the joke was to tell them the biggest lies you could, because you couldn't tell them the truth. First of all, they wouldn't believe you, and second of all, it was sacred. It wasn't to be given to them. And so they make up these wild stories. And sure enough, the anthropologist would print it. And then he'd bring back more trade goods for the next story. And so I heard these stories in every tribe I was invited into. And I think Western archaeologists need to be very, very conscious of the fact that the local shamans know so much, but they're not going to tell a white anthropologist. So there is vast knowledge held among these elders. When they came together in 1998 in New Mexico, and when they came to the United Nations, they gave us a glimpse of that this has not been lost. It's just gone deeply, deeply underground.
And Julie, what are some of the these degrees and angles that we're talking about in, when we were doing the show prep? What are some of these like 22-degree angles of these like medicine wheels and places like that we discussed?
I'm still working on that. In fact, that's our first conversation. We started talking about the 22-degree angles, and I think Graham Hancock is very into the 26-degree angles, and Richard Hoagland is very into the 19.5 degrees latitude. Every person is figuring out the mathematical, quantum physics basis of these grid lines. And all I know is that I just had an inspiration to pick up this book by Kathy, and he talked about the 3,000 stone monuments in England that were, I think it was 23.5 degrees apart. I look them on my map, and I've got a road map that I've been working with. It's not an extremely accurate map. I'm not that much into computers or Google Earth. And I said, these look like they're about 22, 23 degrees apart from each other, because the Dolmen line comes that direction across the map. But what was fascinating is then 2 weekends ago, I had the privilege of going to ceremonies, Cree ceremonies, on a place called the Blacktail Ranch. And on this ranch, there's a huge sun wheel and 3 medicine wheels and a cave that they know has been occupied for over 12,000 years until recently. I shouldn't say occupied for over, it was occupied anciently 12,000 years ago. There are pictographs. It's an extraordinary place. And it's been kept intact because the man who, I know his son, and the man who owns it discovered this cave as a child, and so he's kept everything very intact. And we were in this sun wheel 10 years before I took a group of Nez Perce medicine people there to activate it, to dedicate it and reactivate it to the sun wheel and one of the medicine wheels on this property. And so the group this weekend again went back to the sun wheel and was doing ceremony in the sun wheel. And the next morning when we woke up, I've got this picture on my website, it's an extraordinary photograph. Just at dawn, there was a rainbow that crossed the valley and came down right exactly in the sun wheel and connected to another site. Okay. One end was at one site, one end at the sun wheel. And the picture shows it coming right over top of my teepee. So it's an extraordinary photograph. And in that moment, I just had an epiphany. And I went back and started drawing lines. And I recognized that there is a line, a ley line that starts out at the famous Bighorn Medicine Wheel, which is actually a sun wheel in Wyoming. And if you connect that with, there are the next pictograph site where I talked about the shield figures being, there's a line that connects the pictograph, the shaman rock, the tops of 3 mountains, 2 huge rock faces. I mean, the whole mountain is a perfect face. The Sleeping Giant, which is a mountain of a sleeping giant, 4 major pictograph sites, 2 sun wheels, 4 medicine wheels, and the Montana Vortex all appear exactly across this line on a map that starts in Wyoming and dissects Montana up to Columbia Falls, where the Montana and goes through the Montana Vortex. And I'm sure on into Canada, but I haven't tracked that yet. So when you think of the coincidences or of all these sites being exactly on one line, you know there has to be a vortex. It's an energy grid line. And how I discovered some of these medicine wheels is that I drew a line on a map connecting 2 or 3, and then, wild story, I go to a bar. I don't drink, but I drink Pepsi and hang out until the cowboys fell off their bar stools, a little drunk. And I put the map under them and I say, you know, according to my calculations, there's 2 medicine wheels and others on the property that you own. Could you confirm that for me? And they would draw little X's where the medicine wheels were, where the sun wheels were, but no one could go on the property, and I understand that. And so it's how I figured out these grid lines. And the cowboys would say, I've heard about you. You scared me to death. But nevertheless, if you figure it out, I'll tell you. So they'd confirm and draw X's on my map, and pretty quick it was the grid line.
Well, that's interesting. What exactly is a sun wheel? I know what a medicine wheel is.
Okay, a traditional medicine wheel is what you see with the circle divided into 4. And by the way, the natives tell me that when the Tibetan elders came to Hopi Land, in fact, the Dalai Lama spent 3 weeks in Hopi Land before he met with President Reagan. And Reagan was a little disturbed about that. But he did his spiritual business before he did his political business. And when he met with when the Hopi elders met with the Tibetan lamas, they recognized that their languages were identical opposites. Yes in Hopi meant no in Tibetan. Black meant white. Cold meant the exact opposites. They could speak the language as long as he spoke in direct opposites, which is interesting. And that the 4 directions and the 4 colors of the medicine wheel were identical. And they're also identical in Japan. We took a Japanese woman to the Lakota Sundance, and she knew that ceremony because it's the Shinto religion in Japan. The 4 colors, the 4 directions, the 4 wheels, it's the same. Okay? So they invited her in to represent the yellow race because she already knew her part. She did it in the Shinto religion. It was interesting. So a medicine wheel is 4, it's across in the center into 4 sections, each of which represents north, south, east, west, animals, colors. They're a little different tribe to tribe, but basically the same. A sun wheel is a large stone in the center and radiating lines of stones out. They're more for astronomy. They go to the solstice and to the equinoxes and the more astronomical signs. The bighorn medicine wheel is what they call it. The most famous one in Wyoming is actually a sun wheel. I've been there, and it's got the radiating lines. There are 3 medicine wheels next to the sun wheel, and I believe that they're 23 degrees apart from each other. I can't do those calculations, but they look about that far apart from each other. And they're at least 12,000 years old. That's what they know. And the medicine wheels, the rocks are so old that the grass and turf has grown up over top of them, and you can barely find them. But if you walk and step, you step right on each rock, and so you could see that it was a medicine wheel at one time. My next theory I'm working on, thanks to Michael Tellinger. Michael Tellinger has published a lot on these thousands and tens of thousands of stone circles in South Africa. And he talks about there being cymatic symbols, how they were formed by hitting the rocks with metal, and a vibration would make sand move into a pattern, and then they would lay out the pattern in rocks. Okay. So there are teepee rings all over Montana, and they happen to sometimes be on these grid lines. And they have rock patterns inside of them, big stacks of rocks, and the ones that are not disturbed. And they actually form cymatic patterns inside the teepee ring. So I went down to we had the historical museum and the library here in Helena because we're the state capital. So I spent last winter in there researching drawings and any photographs of teepee rings. There's a large lake, Canyon Ferry Lake, which is very close to the Shaman Rock and right on the grid line, which is a man-made lake, and they had to do an archaeology information before they dammed it up and made it into a lake. So it's probably the best and earliest study of teepee rings in print. And it cracks me up because the archaeologists say, around all these teepee rings, there's rocks in the middle. And the village was 5 miles away. There's no sign of human habitation anywhere around the rings. The human habitation is 5 miles away. So I thought, right, they get up and walk 5 miles to have breakfast in their teepee? I mean, they admitted they were not habitation sites. And in visiting Chaco Canyon, it's the same pattern. There are 3,000 stone rooms in Chaco Canyon in New Mexico. None of them were inhabited. You can't build a fire. There's no doorways in and out, the main lab. So they were not inhabited. And I didn't want to go off onto Chaco Canyon because I just wrote a whole paper about Chaco Canyon and the similarities in the language and the similarities in the pictographs. And yet I find that these sacred sites, just like Göbekli Tepe, it was not inhabited. There's no signs of pottery around these sacred sites. There's no pottery. There's no trash heaps. There's nothing around the sacred sites. And I find that same pattern here in Helena. There's nothing around the sites. They didn't live there.
What was the purpose for these teepee sites or teepee rings then? Or it was like a ceremonial?
I believe exactly what Michael Tellinger says, that they are all around, they're all over, but they're mostly around gold sites. He talks about them being an energy grid, some type of telluric energy grid, that the dolmens, that the teepee rings, that the rock stones were energy grid systems of sound frequencies. And the ones here in there's a few up by Seeley Lake that look just exactly like them. They're 3 or 4 stones high.
Have you smacked any of the rocks to see if they sing?
Actually, at the base of the dolmens.
I'm not being smart. I mean, this is a valid question.
And I'm going to ask you. I'm going to answer your question in an interesting way. At the first dolmen, I should say first dolmen. It's the end of the line that we've discovered. So I call it the base dolmen in a place called Pipestone. There is a huge mountain of rock, right? It's called ringing rocks. And if you take metal and hit the rocks, it goes bom, bom, bing, bom, 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 bing, from the same.
This ties into with Tellinger's.
Exactly. They're absolutely harmonic. The only place in the United States that has that, piles of rocks, then you can sit in one place and make every tone up and down the scale. And so, and that's where we found we have found 5 in a row so far. That's where we found the first one. And then there's 2 complexes. One called Blue Cloud, where there's been ceremonies done there for many years. It's where one of the first ceremonies were restored to, where there's actually these rocks that look like turrets. They look like ziggurats. You can just walk up in a ramp around these like steeple-type rocks. There's a number of those. There are 5 dolmens that face the same mountain. It's like a complex. There's another complex I've named Giant's Playground, and it's the one with the huge tunnels and rocks stacked in extremely fascinating ways, dolmens all over it, huge boulder styled, and all of these. Every site talked about is within 50 miles of Helena. There's also rock cairns. There's 3 rock cairns in a row on top of a mound, and the first one has a stone tablet that's about 1.5 inches thick, and I should have measured it, and it's like about 10 by 12 inches, and there's some type of writing. It's been really worn down, but there's some type of writing on it. We took an expert there, a geologist, and he says that this lichen is way over 1,000 years old, so it was stacked up there for a long, long time, and the sheepherders didn't do it. And all this is just right here in close to this little town.
I think we have 3-4 minutes left. Julie, you brought out so many interesting, worldwide connections, connections within America, like between Montana and New Mexico. Do you think it's just now we're understanding how connected the ancients were all around the globe?
Well, I don't remember the man who said it, but we are raised with amnesia. After the cataclysmic events 12,000 years ago, everything's been forgotten and rewritten and hidden. I believe it's been purposely hidden. The Smithsonian Institute just apologized for destroying all the skeletons of giants that were found in the late 1800s, early 1900s. So much of this has been destroyed on purpose, right, to maintain control of our history. So our history is incredibly controlled. And that is why many of the indigenous cultures have gone completely underground and handed it down through ceremony, through verbal, it's not written, because it's been destroyed, lost. Okay. Many of the sacred objects have been taken into either private collections or reported destroyed. And even the Smithsonian has destroyed. I mean, who we trusted and believed in to keep our history has destroyed it. So I think on many levels, thanks to the internet, thanks to people standing up and speaking out their truth, and other people, thanks to the internet, I can connect the dots. Right? And I think that we're starting to understand that there was a culture that was far more technologically advanced, that every native tribe says that they came from the stars. Their genetics are from the stars. Their ceremonies are about the stars.
I want to make sure you say your website on the air so everybody knows where to find you. We're about getting short on time.
Okay. It's Galactic Facets, GALACTIC, Facets, FACETS.com. Or you can just Google Julie Ryder, RYDER, Helena, Montana, and it comes up with Galactic Facets. And what we've talked about tonight is only 3 pages on my website, or parts of 3 pages. It's pretty extensive. I delve into a number of subjects and have photographs and experiences that move more into the esoteric side. So we've discussed the ley lines and the dolmens and the discoveries made about ancient civilizations. but there's a lot on there. And I told a friend the other day, this is just the background. This is what I've been, there's so much more that I've been taught that I will release when events happen. Natives don't talk in time like years, they talk in series of events. When this happens, do this. When this happens, do this. When this happens, this will happen. So they have series of events, and they just check off those events as they occur. And so there's more to come, and this is what I know so far.
Thank you for joining us tonight.
Yeah, I think we're going to have you back a few more times to get deeper into this subject. It was terrific. Thank you.
Be right back, folks.